If we see the data from around the world, diabetes has become one of the most prevalent diseases worldwide, and millions of people are suffering from this disease. In 2021, a staggering number of 537 million, or more than half a billion individuals around the world were suffering from diabetes. The majority of people with diabetes are in low and middle income countries. In 2021, 3 out of 4 individuals with diabetes were living in low and middle income countries. The most important thing is that 6.7 million individuals around the world died due to diabetes in 2021. This means that one person died in every 5 seconds due to the diabetes. Now, all of us would like to know about the strategies to decrease our risk of developing diabetes. Therefore, it's important to understand that should you take vitamin D supplements to reduce your risk of developing diabetes? Understanding this is important for 2 reasons. First, vitamin D deficiency or insufficiency is very common, and diabetes prevalence is increasing worldwide. You might be suffering from vitamin D deficiency, or you might be at risk of developing diabetes. Second, many epidemiologic studies concluded that there is a relationship between vitamin D status and diabetes, where individuals with low vitamin D status have higher risk of developing diabetes. Make sure to like and subscribe, as this is the first part of a series of videos on vitamin D supplementation. In following videos, we will focus on cardiovascular diseases, cancer, bone health, muscle function, and many more topics. Back to our topic. To answer the question about vitamin D supplementation for reducing the risk of developing diabetes, we will first discuss results from randomized controlled trials. Then, we will follow by sharing the results from Mendelian randomization studies, and finally, we will use the information from the first 2 sections to answer the question based on scientific evidence. First, randomized controlled trials, which is the gold standard studies to answer a research question. The first study that we are going to talk about is the vitamin D in type 2 diabetes study, which recruited 2,423 adults with prediabetes and randomly assigned them to 2 groups. One group received vitamin D supplement, another group received placebo. This was a double-blind study, which means that neither researcher nor the study participants were aware of which group they are in, which improves the quality of the study. At the end of the study, they concluded that vitamin D supplementation did not reduce the risk of developing diabetes. However, we know that people are different, and various factors might influence the effect of vitamin D on diabetes. Therefore, the authors moved forward and did a secondary analysis of their results. They found that vitamin D supplementation reduces the risk of developing diabetes only in 4 scenarios. First, if vitamin D supplementation could help to maintain serum vitamin D level to 100 or higher nanomoles per liter. Second, people without obesity. This is because people with obesity might require a much higher doses of vitamin D supplements to reduce their risk of developing diabetes. Third, people with severe vitamin D deficiency. Therefore, if you are an individual without vitamin D deficiency, vitamin D supplement might not be beneficial to reduce your risk of diabetes. Finally, people who followed the vitamin D supplementation prescription perfectly. Next study is the Tromsø study, which was conducted among 511 subjects with prediabetes in Norway. They randomly allocated people to either receive vitamin D supplement or placebo. At the end of the study, they concluded the same thing, that vitamin D supplementation did not reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Third is the Diabetes Prevention on Vitamin D study, which was conducted among 1,256 adults in Japan. Participants were randomly allocated to either receive vitamin D or placebo, without knowing what they are receiving. Similar to previous studies, this study also concluded that vitamin D supplementation did not reduce the risk of developing type 2 diabetes. As you can see, the results are very consistent from randomized controlled trials that vitamin D supplementation do not reduce your risk of developing type 2 diabetes. Now let's move on and see what Mendelian randomization studies found. Mendelian randomization studies used genetic differences to see whether there is a causal relationship between vitamin D status and risk of developing type 2 diabetes. A number of Mendelian randomization studies have been conducted. These two studies concluded that there is a causal relationship between vitamin D serum concentration and risk of developing diabetes. This means that low vitamin D status increases your risk of developing diabetes. Therefore, if we increase your vitamin D status whether through sun exposure or vitamin D supplementation, your risk for developing diabetes will decrease. However, these three studies that you can see concluded that there is no causal relationship between vitamin D status and risk of developing diabetes, which means that your vitamin D status does not really influence your risk of developing type 2 diabetes, or consuming vitamin D supplementation to increase your serum vitamin D levels might not be a promising strategy to reduce your risk of developing diabetes. Now, considering all these findings from the above mentioned studies, should you take vitamin D supplement to reduce your risk of developing diabetes? To understand on whether you need to take vitamin D supplementation or not, you have to first check your vitamin D status and consider whether you have a health condition or a disease that might affect vitamin D serum status. This is important because if you are a healthy individual, taking vitamin D supplements do not reduce your risk of developing diabetes. However, if you are someone with vitamin D deficiency or insufficiency, or if you are someone who has a health condition or a disease that increases your requirement for vitamin D, it's important to consider vitamin D supplementation to reduce your risk of developing type 2 diabetes. One of the best examples is people with obesity, because individuals with obesity require 2 to 3 times higher vitamin D compared to individuals without obesity. But keep in mind that depending on your level of deficiency or insufficiency or your health condition, you need to take different amount of vitamin D supplements. That's why it's important to consult with your medical doctor to help you determine the best vitamin D supplement in dose that will decrease your risk of developing not only diabetes but also other chronic diseases. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to learn on topics related to nutrition, health, disease prevention, and management.